Chapter 11. We find out more about babies. I set about cleaning myself up. At least the bin liner had saved me from too much damage. Marcia finished off the cheese on toast and tried it out on Petal. Baby kept her mouth clamped shut. Marcia tried playing aeroplanes with her. You know, making the food fly through the air. Here it comes, said Marcia, making her cheese on toast aeroplane dive out of the kitchen sky. Here it comes. And open your mouth. The mouth stayed shut, and the cheese on toast almost crash-landed on Petal's face. I thought babies had to have their food all mashed up, I said. Good idea. Marcia got out an electric mixer. She put the toast in the bowl and switched it on. Bits of toast and cheese disintegrated and went flying out of the bowl and all over the kitchen. Marcia switched off and surveyed the bits of brown and yellow stuck to the walls and ceiling. Maybe not such a good idea after all, she murmured. Petal didn't seem to think it was very funny either and started crying again. Marcia and I looked at each other. I knew what she was thinking. She knew what I was thinking. There was only one thing left to do. We would have to investigate the other end. Bathroom, said Marcia, and I agreed. Marcia grabbed Alien Monster and up we went. At this point, I have to say I felt okay about the whole thing because Marcia was holding the baby, and as long as I wasn't holding the baby, everything was all right. However, when we reached the bathroom, Marcia suddenly handed the baby over to me while she ran the bath, and all at once I didn't feel okay at all. Don't make the water too hot, I said. Babies are bathed in tepid water. You have to feel it with your elbow to make sure it's the right temperature. Marcia stared at me. How do you know? I smiled. It was in my medical encyclopedia, so there. You know what? Marcia was actually impressed. She shoved her elbow into the bath and ran a bit more cold water, and then began taking off baby's clothes. Ugh, it was like unwrapping a present you know you really don't want to. This was a double first for me. Not only had I never changed a baby's nappy, I'd never seen alien poo before. Can you hold my nose for me? Asked Marcia in disgust. So I bent down and held her nose with one hand and my nose with the other. No wonder she was crying, said Marcia, taking the nappy and sticking it into the bin. Right, you hold her steady while I wash her. It felt really weird. All that time I'd been thinking how horrible it'd be. I mean, looking after a baby and all that. But it wasn't. In fact, I actually enjoyed it. It felt nice and cosy and fun. Petal kicked her little legs and splashed us both. She gurgled and giggled and blew bubbles. I glanced at Marcia and noticed that her eyes had gone all soft and dopey. She looked up at me and grinned. Stop looking so soppy, Rob. She's going wrinkly round the edges, I snapped, fetching a towel. Dry her off. It was only after we'd dried the baby that we realised we didn't have a clean nappy for her. Now what do we do? I asked, and we searched around for something, anything we could use. All the bath towels were too big. We'll have to use loo roll, said Marcia, and that gave me an idea. I fished inside my pocket and produced a roll of bandage. How about this? It's better than nothing, but how come you've got something like that in your pocket? I always carry it, just in case. Just in case what? I didn't dare tell Marcia how I'd lived in fear of cutting myself badly or breaking my arm or leg. In case I ever find a baby that needs an instant nappy, I growled, and started winding the bandage round and round Petal's bottom. Marcia lifted her up. You'd better stop. She's beginning to look a bit like an ancient Egyptian mummy. We took Minnie Monster downstairs and tucked her up on the sofa where, mercifully, she fell asleep. With her mouth and eyes shut at the same time, she looked almost angelic. It was hard to believe that she was related to that dark and evil creature lurking in the cellar. Do you think Norman's changed yet? Maybe. It probably takes a little while, like on the X-Files. I went out of the cellar door and listened. I kept expecting to hear an alien noise, you know, hisses and slurps and growls, but there was nothing. Marcia seemed on edge. I just hope the others aren't able to track Norman and his little sister in this house. They could try and get us. We've got the baby, I pointed out, and she nodded. We stood and listened, but only silence drifted back, with just the occasional yell from Norman in the cellar. My eyelids drooped. I was worn out. Then we heard a key in the front door. It swung open and in walked Marcia's mother. We dashed into the hall. Oh, hello, Robert. You're here. Mrs. Lewinsky gave me a second glance. You look in a bit of a mess. Everything all right? Fine, I said. It's just that you seem to have something stuck in your hair. She looked more closely. A slice of tomato. How did that get there? Marcia and I suddenly remembered the kitchen. It still looked as if an elephant had had a birthday party in there. We had to keep Marcia's mum away and out of the front room. I panicked. I tried desperately to think of some explanation for the mess, but Mrs. Lewinsky cut in on me. Would anyone like a drink? No, Marcia and I chorused, and Marcia leaped towards the door. You can't be that thirsty already, Mum, she said. Mrs. Lewinsky looked at both of us in turn. Is there something going on here? Anything I should know about? Marcia decided to tell the truth. Not all of it, but just a little. I made a bit of a mess in the kitchen and we haven't cleaned it up yet. Sorry, Mum. We all make mistakes. At least you told me. Come on, I'll give you a hand. I don't think you... Marcia broke off. It was too late. Her mother was already in the kitchen. Mrs. Lewinsky gazed at the walls and the ceiling. She studied the floor in front of the fridge. You did say a bit of a mess. A lot of mess. Marcia corrected herself. Why is there a pushchair here? Oh no, we'd forgotten the pushchair. What a giveaway. It's mine, I squeaked, and I was thinking, nightmares are nothing to do with what I'm going through right now. Marcia's mum stood there waiting for me to explain why I went around with a pushchair, and of course I couldn't think of any possible reason on earth why I should. My mouth opened and shut, but no noise. No explanation came out. Marcia wasn't any help either. She just stood there with a silly expression on her face. A loud wail came from the front room. What was that? It sounded just like a baby. True to form, Petal began giving her lungs a good workout yet again. Mrs. Lewinsky went straight to the front room. Oh, poor little thing, she cried, falling to her knees and gathering the infant to her chest. What in heaven's name is a baby doing here? It was at this point that Marcia's brain finally seemed to wear out completely, and she lost all sense of reason. It's Rob's, she said. Rob has a baby? He's only 11. No, protested Marcia, going incredibly red. I don't mean that. Well, what do you mean? I took a deep breath. Can we sit down, Mrs. Lewinsky? I can explain everything. Then Norman began hammering on the cellar door and yelling, and I could feel the entire world coming crashing down around me in a million billion fragments. Mrs. Lewinsky strode out of the hall and struggled with the cellar door key. Don't open that door, I yelled. There's an alien in there. Oh, don't be so stupid. There is. You've got to believe us. We've got Norman Vork in there. He's turning into an alien. He's yellow and he's got poisonous tentacles and... Mrs. Lewinsky at last yanked the door open and Norman came staggering out, blinking in the bright light of day. He wasn't yellow and he didn't have tentacles, but he was angry. Well, maybe angry is the wrong word here. Imagine several hand grenades going off inside a drain pipe or a nuclear explosion in the comfort of your own front room. Either of those will do. He was spitting mad. It took Mrs. Lewinsky a good 10 minutes to calm him down, not to mention preventing him from seizing Marcia and myself by the throat. As soon as Marcia's mum had got Norman under control, she went mad. Everything had finally got too much for her. I have had enough of this alien nonsense, she snapped, and she began strapping Petal into the pushchair. We are going straight over to Mr. and Mrs. Vork's, and you can explain everything to them. I don't want to hear your silly stories any longer, Marcia, and you're just as bad, Robert. Come on. And we set off down the street. Norman pushed Petal. Marcia and I trailed along behind while he kept turning round and smirking. As for Mrs. Lewinsky, she was still fuming away nicely behind us. I couldn't believe it. We were being frog-marched slap bang into the arms of the enemy. Mrs. Lewinsky banged on the Vork's door while we waited beside her. From inside the house we could hear noises as something approached. We were knocking at the door and death was about to open it.